CoSpective chat, and Julie will just be sharing a little bit about the Heroic Hearts project and her own respective journey, and we'll kind of go from there. I'm going to try to see if any questions come in, but we'll just get started. Thank you for being here. All right, Julie, I want to hear about your experience with Heroic Hearts project, how you got started, a little bit about your background, or anything that you feel might be helpful to share.
Yeah, absolutely. And first I want to say thank you. Thank you for having me do this and be a part of your community. I very much appreciate it. So I am a military spouse and I am a veteran. I served 4 years in the Army as an engineer officer. And as I got out of the military and transitioned to military spouse, civilian life, there was definitely that struggle there. After raising my kids, I jumped back into the workforce as a consultant for the Veterans Health Administration, and I found it very challenging to feel that reward and value and effect. And so through word of mouth, I started searching for nonprofit work and got connected with Heroic Hearts Project, and I've been with them for about a year and a half. And Heroic Hearts Project is a nonprofit that supports veterans with depression or PTSD access psychedelic retreats. And so we vet, we do all the applications, we prepare, and we hold hands of the veterans going to the psychedelic retreats, and then we integrate their experience with coaching. Mm-hmm. That's what Heroic Hearts Project is. So it's a valuable, very valuable work, and I'm really just delighted to be a part of such an amazing mission.
It's beautiful. How did you get connected with them, and what is your role specifically with Heroic Hearts?
So I'm the director of program operations, so I oversee all of our retreat programs. Mm-hmm. I got connected through them. Basically, as I was looking for other work outside of the VHA, I felt a calling to nonprofit space. It seemed like everyone that I talked to that was working for a nonprofit seemed so grounded and happy. And so I had found psychedelics personally through recreational use, music, and the positive mental and physical benefits, even in the recreational use, was undeniable, especially in comparison to alcohol. Mm. And so I started leaning towards that way on my own personal side, therapeutic side, and just through word of mouth, asking friends, where there are nonprofits supporting veterans that are hiring. I found some in the psychedelic space, and then actually met Jesse, the founder of HHP, at a fitness event, and he was speaking about psychedelics there.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What are you most excited about with the programs that you're currently offering with HHP? What are things that light you up, and what does that process look like to find and to bring in different programs?
Yeah, so really, as you can imagine, the largest barrier for providing psychedelic programs to veterans is access and legality. Mm-hmm. And so when Jesse founded HHP, it was after his experience in Peru using ayahuasca, which is a plant psychedelic that's been used for thousands of years with tribes down there. And so the biggest thing that I'm excited right now that HHP is doing is bringing psychedelic treatments to Oregon. Yeah. And then soon, later this year, Colorado is expected to legalize psilocybin for therapy. And then hopefully early next year, we can start doing retreats there as well. And so last year we've done 1 in Oregon. This year we'll do 7 in Oregon, 5 coming up in the next 3 months. And then we expect to scale and launch domestically, just providing access, mm-hmm. as a tool, as a modality for mental health treatment.
That just kind of leads me into the actual question that was asked by one of our community members, which was, what role does it play in healing? Which was why I was just kind of feeling the nudge to be a part of the conversation, because I feel like, I'm curious to hear about what you have to say about that also, but psychedelics, how this kind of touched me was psychedelics, in my understanding, kind of hits similarly to the modality of breathwork and somatics, in that, especially with breathwork, it's very experiential, and I have a lot to say, but I wanted to sort of allow you to start with what role does this have in people's journeys? Are there, contraindicators, or what would you have to say if someone just had like an interest in it?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good question. A lot to unpack, so we can like go into some of those wormholes as we get there.
Yeah.
The one thing that you said that really struck out for me is the comparison to somatic work in that it's experiential.
Mm-hmm.
I think what you meant by that is when the person is experiencing that modality, that it depends on how they view it and what happens during that experience that they use for pro or con following the experience. Psychedelics are just one type of modality.
Yes.
And they are not for everyone, right? So as you had mentioned, there are contraindications. So some general contraindications are severe mental disorders or mental health issues. Actually bipolar 2 is now being studied with psilocybin. There's more and more research coming out of people having bipolar type 2, which, if you can think of it, and I'm not a scientist and I'm not a doctor, okay, disclaimer. But if you could think of it, as I understand it, similar to diabetes type 1, type 2. Type 1, you're born with it. Type 2, it develops over time. What we're finding is that there's a lot of misdiagnosis from the VHA of people as type 2 to get them mental health drugs. There's a lot of like over prescribing of pills just to fix it. Okay, you're experiencing two different directions here. You're bipolar. And what we're aiming to do is have those veterans speak to a psychologist, understand, does that type 2 diagnosis come after some major traumas? Military traumas? Sexual traumas, family traumas. If so, maybe we can support addressing those traumas instead of the type 2 bipolar. Anyway, so aside from that, other like schizophrenia, bipolar type 1, borderline personality disorder, dissociative identity disorder. Before I started with HHP, I didn't realize there were so many types of mental health disorders, but all of those would be a no until it is either re-diagnosed or addressed in that way.
Or if it's not in like an acute active state at the time of entering the modality. And there are many different types of psychedelics. MDMA and psilocybin are the two that are coming onto market more soon.
What is MDMA? I'm not familiar, so...
MDMA, it would be impressive if I actually knew the chemical compound, but it's basically, street name is ecstasy or Molly. If you've heard of those, that's what that is.
I think that again, where I sort of orient to when I was trying to, in my own experience, not speaking to this live from a place of being in the position similar to Julie in terms of like being really enwrapped or in the community of psychedelics, but I think that there's something to be said about when a person chooses or is drawn to a modality such as psychedelics or something that is a little bit more experiential, like breath work, where it's kind of a big experience that happens kind of one time and then or several times, but over the span of many months. It's asking us to meet the intention for the why behind your desiring to get access to this type of experience, which helps to sort of clarify for the person what their, not necessarily expectations, but like what is it that they're wanting to use this for.
Yes.
And I think that's a big piece of it. And I also think that from what I understand, and also through my own experience in meeting the medicine of psilocybin, so much of the medicine for me and so much of what I understand it to be for many others is giving you a different sight or opening up your senses and awareness to different perspectives and different understandings. And a lot of times in the work of holding space for people who are coming to breathwork, their work, the actual impact of the modality is not actually breathing itself. It's like all of what's happening before they even click to sign up for breath work. It's every story they're meeting of themselves, or do I belong here? Is this even going to work for me? I'm going to feel out of place. It's not working. Whatever the story is, I think my belief or my lens of breath work, which I feel is similar to psychedelics, is you get what you need, and sort of there's this trust and understanding that even if there's a bad or a negative, if you want to call it that, experience, the medicine evokes other understandings, and then you use that. And so I think that's really powerful and can be very empowering.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
yeah.
Have you found that people that are searching like specifically for your project, for your retreats, do they have very similar backstories?
Definitely.
Like,
Yeah.
have they explored a lot of other things that just they felt stuck and they felt like there was nothing else that they
Yeah.
could? Yeah.
That's definitely a good synopsis of it. So, and to your point, we look for veterans who are ready and able and have that belief, and they're ready to take that next step. And so, when we're filling our seats for enrollment, we do a really intentional job of never saying recruiting. We're not trying to broadcast and get people to come on retreats. That is not the nature of the game. It is, this is what it is. This is what is available. When you're ready, let us know. And we very much, handle our intake calls to be delicate with that environment. If someone is if we're sensing that they're too closed off and they're not yet ready, and it's not their idea, it's not their wish to come to the medicine, then we ask them to be prepared and let us know. So the typical story is late 20s, early 30s veteran. Generally male are the ones that are a little bit more adventurous to go do ayahuasca internationally, but we're finding a lot more ladies, female veterans, are more comfortable going domestically doing psilocybin. Different mode of travel, and then different psychedelic. They generally have served for a number of traumatic years and then have gone to the VA for mental health reasons. A lot of them are discharged for PTSD or depression. A lot of them are divorced or in power struggles for their children. A lot of them are very low on financials, low on self-esteem, low on morale, and are looking on the internet for what else could work, what else could help me. We look for what medications are they currently on, and then what modalities of treatment have they tried. And that is another key question that we ask on the intake calls, what else have you tried besides pills? Because a lot of them that are really successful that go through our program recognize that the pills are not the answer. They call it the VA cocktail.
Yeah.
And then they self-wean. They're like, these make me feel numb. I don't want to do it anymore. And they're ready to look for something else. And they've gotten clean on their own. And then they dive into the breath work, meditation, journaling, affirmations, all of these things that the mental health space, I think, that is doing such a good job of trying to get out there.
Would you say that to some degree the use of psychedelics can offer a person sort of a little bit of more capacity, more space within themselves to know their direction, to kind of be like a reset?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Know their direction.
Yeah.
I find that after a psychedelic experience, you feel grounded, peaceful. That imposter syndrome that's on your shoulder and so loud during the conflicting moments of your life is just quiet. And just small. If they're at all.
Pause.
And so then when when a new person or stimulus arises into your experience, you're able to approach it from your true genuine self and be like, is this good for me or not? And if it's not good for you, it's not, there's no trigger. There's no well, how could you? It's more I'm going to let that go. And I'm going to let that person go, or that experience go, the person that flipped me the bird. You can keep going. Enjoy your day, sir. And that's it.
I think that speaks so much to the shift in the lens. There's a quote, and I'm going to botch the quote entirely, but it's from the book Return to Love by Marianne Williamson, and she talks about how a change in perspective is often a miracle, and how sometimes a psychedelic journey can be just that. It literally is just the way in which you shift the lens, and how that can open up so much more for you. And that is the thing that just propels it, and that the psychedelics itself is the catalyst to that experience for someone. And I find that to be so inspiring, because oftentimes in our community, you see mental health as this, it's very heavy, it's very daunting, it's very intimidating work that we must do. And it sort of like drives the willpower parts of us that are like, and people don't have a lot of capacity right now. We're very full. And so I feel like there is such a beautiful place in this world for something like that. And I'm getting so excited talking about it.
Good.
There's also a lot of noise, or that's not noise, but being in the world of somatics, you go on your Instagram, handle, and there's a ton of somatic yoga, somatic this, somatic, and oftentimes breath work is now even portrayed as always these very loud, very big, expansive experiences. And there's sort of some pushback, I think, in the community of like, that's stretching someone's capacity, that's snapping it, not stretching it. And so I want to, like, part of me wants to defend that, but also I guess I just wanted to like bring a conversation around of like supporting someone's integration for such a reset. And also, like, you've spoken to the before part, but how can Heroic Hearts support a person's window of tolerance for actually being able to receive and like hold the experience? That makes sense.
So what about dig into integration a little bit? And some other two things that we can pin to talk about are the stretching versus snapping. In my mind, my mind went to microdose versus macrodose.
Yes.
We can pin that, but I'm personally a macrodose kind of person.
Sure.
And then also person's experiences shaping the way that they perceive the world, and I have some examples that we can get into, but if you want to, we could talk a little bit about the integration. And so coming back real quick to our 9-week program is surrounding all of our retreats. So there's 4 weeks of coaching, 3 group coaching calls, 3 one-on-one coaching calls. You're assigned a personal coach, and then there's the retreat, which is generally about a week, give or take. And then 4 weeks on the back end of the 3 and 3 calls again. Then after that, we invite alumni back every month for alumni calls, and there's just a lot of times they're just free flowing.
Wow, that's beautiful.
And they're riffing off of each other, and they're 90 minutes, and they're in the evenings, and you just plug in your headphones, and sometimes I'm screen on, screen off, or just like high-fiving other veterans and like supporting them through their way.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's really good.
Okay.
So. Do you have any other questions on integration before we hop off?
I just appreciate the integration piece, because I think that it's something that I have had to refine in my own offerings. Starting out teaching breathwork, I started, and I know there's so many relatability parts, so that's why I keep bringing up breathwork. But
no, that's good.
I started off holding space for breathwork in a group that was kind of like a drop-in style class. And for me, and what I've come to know about the nervous system and about stretching versus snapping, and about, again, really empowering people to meet themselves, but also giving them the tools to be able to support their process moving forward. I think I lost my train of thought a little bit, but just hearing you speak of
having a container.
There's some edges and some follow-up,
Yes.
and really allowing that to kind of be a full process feels really kind.
And I'm curious, so who is involved in the calls? Is it like therapists and then other, like, what does that look like as far as pairing people to a specific mentor?
So all of our coaches are veterans that have gone through our program first as participants, and then I've gone through a psychedelic coaching course called Being True to You, Once they go through that, then they do some peer coaching, and then they get into coaching clients. A select few of those coaches are facilitators for HHP, meaning that they do the logistics and basically the hand holding, so to speak, of the groups that go down to the retreat locations. And so it's those facilitators that lead the group calls, and then it's just the participants on the call, and then maybe one or two other of our team members, on the calls. I will say though that a few things on integration that I thought of after I pass it to you is that, well, one, integration is forever, and whether it's a psychedelic experience or a breathwork experience, or I'm going to tie this in real quick to the experiences that I wanted to touch on. Those major life shifts that you can think of, ones in your life that you've experienced that make you look at the world differently and respect your life, respect your family.
Yes.
Like as a mother, if you've ever lost your child for 30 seconds at the zoo, and then your heart's racing and you're panicking on the inside, and then you find your child again, you might be more willing to give them ice cream later when they ask for it, right? You're okay, I just be with me, be here.
Yes.
Anyway, so going back to integration, it's interesting to see the flow and the ebb and flow of people integrating back into, from that experience, that kind of high, that there's this mellow experience after the psychedelic where, there's less temper, there's less reactions, everything's good and easy, and then life starts picking at you again. And then the traffic happens, and then the kid's crying happens, and then the spouse says something in a sarcastic tone, and it's zoom, these little zings. And then how are you able to stay grounded and in touch with that flow of yourself, of your true self? And what are you doing on a daily basis to keep that going?
I really appreciate how you said that it's kind of that arc.
Yeah.
And it's in somatic world, we call it the come down, which you referred to as this mellow space. Yeah. And fascinatingly, I think that, again, the integration proves itself to be lifelong, because this is my lens, but I think that you have this peak experience, whether it's psychedelics or breath work or whatever else it is, you come down, your body is kind that way. It's actually like birth. You have a contraction, it's hard, you come down. You have a contraction, it's hard, you come down. But there's the little prickles or the traffic, I love that analogy. It comes to you because it's life's way of loving you, being see how you can meet it this time, not as a test, but as an opportunity. And that framework has helped so many of my clients shift their relationship to their experience, because they're yeah, this is not that I'm doing it wrong. It's actually just because life's hey, what do you think about this? Let's try it out. Let's see how let's say how it's shifting for you.
Yes.
And so, I don't know where to end that, but it just feels really important to talk about.
But I think this is a really interesting and important point, that people have this misconception about healing. Healing doesn't mean you're never going to face the challenges of life. It is the human experience to embrace all the parts, all the facets, all the nuance of life, right?
Great.
Yep.
It is just our capacity to hold the duality of the hard with the grief and the good and the joy, and so much of our adult experience, or the life experience, is that duality and living in that.
Yeah,
so having these modalities that allow us that capacity to hold it all, right?
Exactly.
To give us that Selah. Do you know what that word means?
No.
It is a pause. It is such a beautiful word, because I think so much of our world is very reactive. And we don't ever give ourselves, it's we have to answer right now. No. You can take a pause. You can take that moment for yourself.
That's lovely.
It is such a beautiful word, and just rolls off the tongue.
Where did you find it?
So actually in, Glennon Doyle's
Untamed.
She was talking, talked about Selah and having that pause, that exhale, that moment. And I was that is such a beautiful word. And I have a friend whose daughter's name is Selah, and I love that that's her name. She is the
really
most
lovely.
beautiful pause.
It's a good anchor word for sure.
It is, and Selah is the anchor of that family, which I love.
Beautiful.
But I do think there's something to be said about meeting that curiosity of trying these different modalities. But I love that so many of the people that have experienced these retreats with you have tried all of these other modalities, have met themselves there, and then feel ready.
Yeah.
Have you ever found that there are people that don't maybe get past these calls, these introductory calls? And
Yeah.
you're just like, you know what, you're just not ready yet. What does that look like?
There's probably about 10% of the veterans, because to get onto an intake call, they first have to have an accepted application and then accepted enrollment request form, which is like basically, are you ready to go on retreat for real? And then about 10% of people either don't respond back after the intake call. They're like, I'm not ready. Or we, through our questions, we uncover that they don't have that level of stability or confidence in their way to go. In those cases, if we are the ones saying, hey, this is not your time, then we connect them with other resources. If they have any sort of mental disorders, they do get connected to a psychologist or follow on like veteran support groups.
I love that you offer so many different options. That's really beautiful. To really meet people where they are, I think, is so important.
Yeah.
And I love that speaks so much to the work. Is like, you're not advertising like, hey, you come, everybody come and get this retreat. It's like, no, this is very important and sacred medicine that is meant to meet you where you are when you are ready.
When you're ready.
Well, that part is massive, when you are ready. And I think that sometimes because we're so interdependent, and I believe that we can up level, I don't like that word, support our experience through being held in other people's guidance, support. I feel like I think about a person's body, like their readiness to receive even somatic work. There's so much like misperception on somatic processing, even in that every time we meet a client, we're just dropping into the body every single time. That's not what it is, because there's semantics in the somatics, and so much of our body's response is it's correlated with our thoughts and our mind. And so when you say like you're kind of feeling into this person showing up for the intake call, it's really kind to them to just acknowledge, and they're really already acknowledging it. You're just kind of affirming their readiness and then giving them all these other resources, because to push a body into somatic practice without context or without safety in their experience is really just going to evoke more of the same story.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I just wanted to open it up in case anybody has questions or things that they want to add in. Hi.
I have a question, and please take some off there, but
Yeah.
I have a question for you two.
Yes.
And I'm curious what your answer would be coming from your experience and the context that you've studied already in regards to spirituality and mental health.
Okay.
What if you have a bad trip?
Yes, I wanted to add. I was going to ask you that.
That's like one of our biggest questions, because
Yeah.
people are just so nervous that could happen, and it does happen. So like, I'm
Yeah.
curious what you guys would say.
I've never personally experienced it, so it's actually a little context. I'm from Miami.
Okay.
The party capital of the United States. So I was like, and she speaks like
You can talk like that.
I was going to say, please never stop. That's my favorite version of Alex.
God.
So in middle school, I had friends that were dabbling in Molly, in ecstasy. Things were laced with like rat poison. I had friends literally go to the emergency room. So I was always so incredibly terrified and saw people around me having these experiences. And obviously it was recreational and not, not in a medical setting. But it was so scary. And so I can't speak to it because I've always been a little terrified, but I feel that I'm grateful that there are places that you can go, that you're held in a medical and professional setting with the resources and all of
I think as you share your story, it makes me kind of wonder if how much of what you lived in those childlike, teenage-like experiences sort of contributed to the messaging of the fear that you have, which is honest, and it makes sense. It's real. But I feel like I'm curious if that is contributing to like the breath hold of psychedelics.
Totally. But I've done so much inner work, and somatics for me has been such an incredible pillar, and it has allowed me to feel safety in my body that I did not feel for 37 years of my life.
Yeah.
It is such a gift to come back to myself, to that safety of my own body, and not looking for any external anything to feel that. Because I think that for so long I was like, I need you to love me, I need you to hold me, I need you to do this. But I'm like, I need to be that for myself before.
Yeah.
Above all things.
So when you think about the bad trip, I'm asking you, and I need you to reflect this back to me, but with where you are today, how do you meet that fear of like, what if it's a bad trip, or even what if your first time is a bad one?
I think she's asking you if you're ready to tell us.
Yeah, I am.
Dun dun dun! Stay tuned for the answer, folks.
I didn't like plan to ask.
Just happened.
So it's actually very interesting that you asked that question. So my darling brother, who I am so inspired by and admire so much. He has dabbled recreationally, and he had a very truly life-altering experience with it, where he was able to see our Father with different eyes and completely forgave him and just was able to move forward. And I so admire and desire that. And I remember thinking, this was several years ago at this point, but I was like, wow, like how beautiful that you were able to come to that forgiveness, for that like pause in your own life and just be like, he had his own set of experiences that spoke into the way that he fathers and the way he moves in the world, and I forgive him for the tools or the resources that he didn't have or doesn't have access to, or is just incapable of meeting.
Yeah, your brother's experience like has allowed you to also perhaps widen your trust for it too.
Definitely, but I think so much of it is also set and setting, right? Like, I loved Andrew Huberman's podcast regarding the science of psychedelics and his conversation with Dr. Robin Carhart Harris. Like, I think it was so beautiful for them to kind of really talk about that process and what that looks like. And maybe you can speak into what that process looks like with HHP also, but talking about how music is so important and just like the crescendos and all of that. But I respect and admire people's desire to know that they are ready. I've definitely explored that idea myself of what that could look like. And I think that there isn't a bad trip. I think, like you said, what's there is going to meet you. And perhaps there's just information in that experience that you might think is bad, but it's more just like, oh, let's get curious about this. What happened there? Was it me holding? Was it me not desiring to surrender? Because I think there's so much power in the surrender sometimes, right?
All the time.
Yeah.
Every time.
In that.
Yeah. And that's the hardest thing is like we as human beings, we have this desire to control.
So thank you for giving me that segue, because I think that, again, when I think about the relationship to your journey as being a bad trip, and by the way, I'm not around, I'm not a facilitator of psychedelics, so I'm not privy to like what that would actually look like for someone. But I think it really goes back again to the anchor point of readiness, because when you're really ready, truly authentically ready, then you're accepting the risk, you're accepting the uncertainty, and that means that you're saying yes to this being good or this being bad. And I'm using very like simple words, good and bad, like there's so much nuance in that, but so there's like, that's my relationship to it. But then from a personal perspective, I recently just went under, that does not sound right.
I come from the
Under the influence. I met psilocybin in a journey just 3-4 weeks ago, I think now. And I had known that I wanted to move through this probably a year ago, but it took me a full year to actually action my desire. And about a week prior, I had a call with the beautiful person who held me through this space. And in that moment, like right after the call, immediately my work was in session. I started to second guess myself. I felt a bit of anxiety show up in my body. And where was I going with this? The point for me was that. Like, that was why. That was the big part of my work in the medicine, was being able to acknowledge and meet myself in the experience of being out of control. So your control was my segue, coming from a human who, just a small little background, my brother was a heroin addict. So struggled rather with the use of heroin to support his process. And so my only reference point for drugs was the pain and anguish that my brother was experiencing, and then us witnessing him in that pain. And so I've spent my whole life for lots of different reasons trying to control my body, what I put in it, choosing to not take anything really, because that was my, and there's so much more to this, but I think being able to question your experience and question your stories is a really big part of finding the readiness within yourself, and being able to just meet it. I could go on, but I think you're getting it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I am curious how that has translated for people that feel that their experience was not what they hoped or was not the outcome that they desired.
So first off, you both have kind of touched on it. When we start talking to somebody from their intake call through coaching, we're very careful with language because words matter, right?
Yes.
Expectations are thrown out the window immediately.
Yes.
There is no expectation about what it's going to do for you. It's going to do nothing for you.
Yes.
If that's your perspective.
Yep.
It is, what am I going to do for myself because of this tool or experience? And so therefore, what is your intention? What are you going to do with it? Right? Then the second is like, what happens if it doesn't give them what they hoped? Usually people that start having a really hard time, it's about 2 months, 3 months after the psychedelic experience when they realize that all the same triggers still trigger them.
Yep. Yeah.
I think Ram Dass said something, if you guys haven't heard of or listened to Ram Dass before, it's a great podcast. I think he said that, before he started his spiritual journey, he had all these neuroses, and he has not got rid of any of them. He still has all of his neuroses. We are all still going to be human, period.
Yes.
And so it's more so coming back to, what am I going to do to be observant to these neuroses, observant to these triggers? What am I going to do to create space between my reaction and the trigger, and behave in action of what my true self or what my highest self would do?
Yeah.
And so it's all in education, right? And so subjectively, through our research at HHP, we have 80% positive success stories, right? And this is all just through subjective, long-term surveys that we take with our people. That's an astounding amount of positive versus like what SSRIs and SNRIs do for our population, which I think is like a 26% success rate.
Yes.
It's low. It's very low, and there's no better option out there right now. So, education and how to perceive and how to stay uplifted is the best answer for this modality and all the modalities.
I love that so much, and it makes me think of the word relationship, which is so much a part of like the work that I do with clients, in that I use something called IFS, or internal family systems, where it's this understanding that we're a monomatic mind and that we all have parts. And it's fascinating when we start to really uncover how these parts show up in ourselves. It's our relationship to these parts that actually keeps these parts of us in fierce protective modes. And so when we start to uncover them and how they show up for us, we start to understand and not change them, but shift our relationship to them. And again, just understanding that like all the parts of us work in positive intent can be enough to sometimes like orient to, like I don't need to get rid of this part of me. I don't need to change it. I don't need to rise above it. I don't need to bully it. I can actually just meet it. And even more so, embrace it. Because when we do that, it shifts wildly, and I'm imagining that there's just so many parallels in the experience of psychedelics. So
Definitely.
I think that speaks so beautifully too, though, to the parts of ourselves that we're sometimes unable to meet or to accept or to acknowledge are likely the parts of ourselves in childhood that were not accepted, that were maybe shunned and made to feel like, oh, that's too big. Oh, I don't like when you act like that. Or I don't like when you do this, that, or the other. But oftentimes that's just information. again, it's like, I think getting curious about our own experience, about our reactions, our triggers. What information can we get from that experience?
Yeah.
So I love the parts work because I feel like it is holding all of it. And again, I think these modalities are so beautiful in allowing us the capacity to hold it all.
Yeah.
When maybe we're acting in a way that I'm like, oh, I hate when I, do this or that. I'm like, wait, but why? Why do I feel this way right now? What is happening in my environment right now that is causing me to have this reaction?
Yeah, curiosity.
That curiosity is so vital.
Curiosity. Yeah, like if someone is in,
Check-in.
there's some basic coaching points for the psychedelic journey. I don't know what Trip shared with you. I'll find out soon.
I'm so curious.
But like, here are some common sayings. When you see a staircase, walk up it.
Yeah.
When you see a door, go through it. When you're met with a monster, ask it why it's there and what you can learn from it.
Yes.
Right? Because it cannot physically hurt you, but you might feel like it can, and you might feel that fear. But the moment that you start, like I had this experience with ayahuasca, I was met with this like beautiful black jungle monster.
Wow.
And she was my ego. She was my protector. But she had to be loud and a badass and like stand up for herself because she was protecting me.
Yeah.
And at first I was like very surprised that she was there and so beautiful and so scary. But then I was like, I love you. And then I started forming this relationship with her. To love the part of yourself that protects you and appreciate it.
Yeah.
Oh, and then she opened right up and let me in.
Oh,
It was awesome.
So powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to recall what he said, but it was very much that. And if I can share, there was two parts of my journey that are feeling really loud right now. One was the beginning, where there was so in psilocybin, there was a lot of visuals in the beginning, and it felt like I was on a Disney ride, and I was on a ride, and I would go into a room, and it would be one room, and there would be a very big, like very specific tone and energy to this one room, and I would experience the room, and then I would sort of like, the ride would keep going, and it would be this other room, but this one room, I could tell that I was feeling a lot of resistance to it, and I had a fit with my mask, and I kept opening and closing I was resistant to seeing what was in this room, and I could tell that I was resistant too, because it kept like Groundhog Day, like I kept entering the room and not entering the room and then coming out of the room. And so I remember specifically asking for a hand, like an actual hand. So the person who was guiding me, like he held my hand, and that was supportive for my body to just like trust that, okay, I'm ready. And then I entered that room, and then there that room was, and it was very clear that I needed to be in that room. That part was really supportive, but also, just the I think I'm going to pause because it's so personal, so emotional, which it could take me an hour to share it fully. But it is very powerful.
Yeah.
I am curious, like, how do you know, or how do you choose which medicine? What does that look like?
So the very simple answer to that is that it will call you.
Okay.
And so the best thing to do is that if you're interested in using a psychedelic, well, first off, the best advice to use a psychedelic is that you are in a comfortable set and setting. Okay, so for some people that means a completely legal, above ground service center with licensed psychologists and a medical team there. For other people, it's obtaining psilocybin from a trusted source and working with somebody that you believe has enough experience to make you feel comfortable in that experience. So there's all of those different options.
Yeah.
But the medicine calls to you. What that process looks like is investigating, researching, understanding. For some people, it might be diving into a Huberman lab and knowing like the drug on brain interactions. I was listening to that this morning with cannabis, like learning about like how cannabis triggers hunger, but it can never kill you, but opioids can because of how it affects the brain. And so like for some people, they just need to know like scientifically, how is this going to hit my system and when, and blood-brain barrier and da-da-da. Other people might be more into like the spiritual, somatic body realm energies and knowing how it may affect their chakras. It's all in belief.
Yes.
And set and setting.
Yes.
Yes.
What do you believe will make you happy, healthy. Go there.
Yeah. Do you find that the people that participate in the retreats already know like what they want to, which medicine they're interested in going with?
So how it's set up right now at Heroic Hearts Project is that you're requesting to enroll in domestic psilocybin or international ayahuasca.
Okay.
I would say 90% of the people that fill out one of those applications are
Already know.
confident that that's what they want. It also comes down to accessibility, what we have when.
Yeah.
But then also there's probably, I don't know, maybe 20-25% that are like, oh, which one should I do? And we talk through a little bit of the differences. Would you like me to talk through the differences a little bit?
I'd love for you to talk about the differences and also like how many people are part of the retreats. Like I'd love to hear how what the experience is like, if you're able to talk about that.
Yeah, so most of our retreats, 10 is the sweet spot for a container of support. A 1 hour or a 90-minute phone call when everyone gets to share, they get to know each other, learn each other. So we try to stay between 7 and 12 on all of our retreat types. The ayahuasca, generally how it's done, and there's the different formats at different retreats and in different tribal regions, but our format is 6 days, 5 nights, 3 ayahuasca ceremonies. So there's an opening, a working, and a closing, each in the next day. 3 days in a row. With the psilocybin retreats, it's 2 psilocybin ceremonies back to back during the daytime. Ayahuasca's done at night. And so ayahuasca is done with local tribal elders. Like in Peru, it's with the Shipibo tribe. They literally come down from their tribe on the Amazon River. They come on a boat 10 hours south, and they go to the retreat center in the Amazon, and they lead these ceremonies just like they would with their tribal.
Wow.
And
It's really powerful.
these people have been working with the medicine for, I think, 26 and 37 years. Are the guy and the girl that led my ceremony. It's just like that is what they do.
Yeah.
They call them healers. They channel the energy of that plant from up above into you and show you your true direction. But it all comes down to belief, right? What do you believe?
I love that we're even answering this question, because again, to me, it relates to readiness, safety, intention. Like it's all coming back to that again. And I just spoke to this with relationship to breath work. Like you can experience breath work in a group, you can experience breath work as a one-on-one session, and for some it is terrifying to imagine showing up to a breathwork class and being around other people's bodies and feeling the energies of the room and breathing into that kind of a space. And yet for another person it would be very naked to just be held as a one-on-one where all the attention of the facilitator is on that person, and that would be too stimulating or too overwhelming. And so there is options, and for a reason, because it's meant to really, it's meant to meet you, but it's also meant to provide you with some anchor, some safety. Yeah, I love that. Has there been any questions, Alex, or people just
Friends, does anybody have any questions?
Yes.
With regards to any alternative chatting, alternative healing, alternative chatting? I'm so delighted that you guys are here and watching. This will definitely be shared as a reel later, but would love to open it up if anybody does have questions. Michelle, I see that you're on. Hi, Melissa.
Michelle.
I'm trying to see. I'm a little...
I cannot see.
Let's see who's on. Oh, we've got Justine. Do you have any questions, friend? Okay. Well, yeah, I'm curious what the integration process. So it's like 2 days, 3 days for ayahuasca, 2 days, and then how much time do you have after that to just kind
At
of...
the retreat center?
Yeah.
Typically it's 1 full day, sharing circles, yoga, meditation, breath work, all healthy foods, low salts, low sugars, like low preservatives. Tech detox
Yeah.
the whole time.
Yeah.
we encourage them to turn in their phones and just be in nature or with each other or be in solitude, and then travel home. And then they get the coaching calls on the back end, like we mentioned.
It's beautiful.
It sounds like that is really intentional and also speaks to the integration from a place of like, yes, we want to absolutely hold and support and guide you and resource you. And also Heroic Hearts, it sounds like also trusts of the, like in the healing power of the person. And that like when you have that belief, it really empowers the person who's experiencing it and gives them more trust in themselves that like, yes, we do need support and we do need tools and resources, and also we've got it. You know what I mean? Not from like but yeah, we've got it. It's empowering.
Yeah. I love that. I underlined stretching versus snapping. I don't know if you wanted to go back to that.
Sure. So I'll speak to it from a psychedelic perspective. Some people feel more inclined to microdosing, but you can microdose almost all of the psychedelics to my knowledge, but I think psilocybin is one of the more common ones, especially that's coming about now. And so, a microdose might give you just like that slight elevation in cognitive function. Your brain might feel like it's working faster. You have more like readily access to memories or emotions or ideas, and or more able to get into the flow state, like if you're a musician or an artist, like being able to create and enjoy being in the moment. Some people enjoy that more than taking like a heroic dose or like a couple grams and having like a 6-8 hour experience of a ride, so to speak.
Yeah.
But then like the afterglow is different, right? Like a microdose, let's say you take a microdose 3 days in a row and then take 2 days off. By that end of the second day, you might be ready for your next wave of microdose. Someone that takes a macro dose, by the way, psychedelics, psilocybin, ayahuasca, those specifically, they're not habit forming.
No.
Because the body experiences them and says, especially in a macrodose, like, what the heck was that? It's not like I want to do that again now. And so there's this natural.
It's a very important thing to say.
The more you tune into the self, like your own highest self, the more you'll know and develop that intuition of when you'd be ready again.
Yeah.
There's this saying in the psychedelic space, when you get the message, hang up the phone. Like, how do you know when is enough? It's like, well, you'll know when you're not, like, when it's offered to you and you're like, I don't want to go in far out land. I want to be in real land.
Yeah.
You'll stay there.
Yeah.
So some people, all that to close that out, is some people enjoy that ride and the afterglow of maybe like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, depending on the experience. Like yours sounded massive, maybe 3-6 months.
Sure.
It's the flavor of the individual. We're all different, so find what feels good.
I think that's important. Like you said, intention is incredibly important, and to be able to find that safety within your body and then utilize the resources that are available.
Yeah, I think I will just share just a personal experience, because I started to microdose about 1.5 years ago, and for me that felt really right and really safe. Cool. And I think the biggest awareness or insight that I've noticed is that it has shortened my remembrance time of like knowing when I'm hooked into my thinking and being able to notice that a little bit, maybe shorter time span than if I'm not microdosing, which again sort of for me affirmed why a big macro dose was going to be really, really supportive for me, because knowing that the reason, and again, this is my experience, but like knowing that the microdose was sort of my like comfort zone and like safety, I will likely be the person that will take a long time to integrate that big macro dose, but trusting and thinking about who was going to be holding me during that was a massive part in me feeling like a yes to the entirety of the experience, which we've talked about and like woven through this conversation. So
I thought of something to add on to the conversation of stretching versus
Oh,
snapping,
yes.
which is that someone that meditates for a very long time, I did meditation through the app Headspace for a while, and they likened it in a story to like shining a rusty pot, right? It's when you sit down to do 5 minutes or 20 minutes of meditation, it's like buffing this one spot on the pot, but it's not going to be completely shiny for a long time. And so it takes time to develop the skill of being able to drop in and clear the mind, although I don't like that word. I could find another one, but be at peace, let's say.
Yeah.
Right? It takes practice and effort. You do a macro dose, or you do like a tool, yoga, meditation, any of these options of tools, it takes time to develop the ability to find peace and clear the mind. So if you're just doing a macro dose like once a year, I can hear the naysayers be like, well, are you truly developing the skill of being able to find peace?
Yeah.
Right? Could you be doing more? Like for myself, when I go to yoga sessions, but sometimes if it's been some time since I've found my inner self peace,
Sure.
it might take me 30, 40 minutes to like just drop in the
Drop
flow
in.
and find my breath and then
Yep.
be confident and peaceful on the inside.
Yeah, that
And
makes
so
sense.
it doesn't matter what your tool is.
Yes!
It could be
Yes.
playing cards with your kids. It could be going skateboarding. Like we're talking a lot about the holistic health realms right now, but it could be anything
Agreed.
that you find peace with, that confidence, that stillness, that resolve to be healthy.
I think that just one last thought about the stretching versus snapping is like this understanding of there's so much talk about what healing should look like. And I have a lot of clients that come to me and they're like, yeah, I'm trying to meditate, but I'm like not, it doesn't work for me. Meditating in the traditional sense of like sitting down and closing your eyes and meditating. But what I've come to notice is that for an individual who's been living in sympathetic dominance and their nervous system has been hypervigilant for their entire life, that practice is going to snap their nervous system instead of stretch it. And it's going to also invite in more of their critic and more of their pressure cooker and their anxious parts because I'm doing it wrong. And that's going to send the whole system right into a stress response. So it's again about perhaps meditating for this type of individual looks like going for a walk where there's movement and they're not forced to be from one extreme to the other, and there's some flexibility in what that looks like. And I think that's really powerful and can support the psychedelics world, the skating world, the breathwork world. Like it's just about discerning and getting close to like what it is that your body needs.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think there is no one size fits all.
Oh, great. Good relief. Yeah.
We all just need to figure out what it is that, like in small ways, whether it's playing cards with your kiddos, going for a walk, going to the beach. What are the places that you can find that exhale in really small ways, and then working your way up to being curious about different modalities that could support your experience and your journey. But this has been a really beautiful and enlightening conversation. I do want to just ask, like, for the people that maybe are curious about like the science behind it and the research that has been done with HHHP, how is that continuing to evolve? Because there has been so much emerging research. So what does that look like, and how are you able to kind of tie into all of that research and pour it into like HHP, and how you change like the programs maybe, or even the dosing, etc.?
Yeah, good question. So we do have a research team, Grace Beckley. She's over in the UK. We're paired with Imperial College of London. And they run all of our research. Cool. So they run all of the surveys. We have pre-surveys and post. Another arm of our research that Grace also operates is with this team called Onaya Science. And they're aiming to investigate the impact of ayahuasca and specifically the Shipibo tribal ceremonies and traditions on the body. And so they, of course, have surveys on the front and back end, but then they take EEG readings before going into, and this one is specifically a longer retreat. It's 10 days, 5 ayahuasca ceremonies.
Okay.
So they do EEG readings and biomarkers. They take saliva and stool samples to understand what the gut microbiome is doing before and after retreat. And then we're also partnering with UT Austin to do an ayahuasca clinical trial. So our veterans are flying there 2 weeks before the retreat starts and after to do EEG readings. So those are separate, but all investigating. So it's really, on the ayahuasca side, I would say that everyone on our team and most of our veterans that go through the program believe that it works.
Yeah.
Certainly the Shipibo already believe that it works. So now what we're trying to do is research, prove in Western style clinical trial and placebo and all that kind of stuff that it does, and to support funding, not necessarily access, because access starts getting into how much is grown, where it's grown, who should have access to it, how is it administered. How it's administered based off of its roots is how it should be administered, period.
Yes.
It doesn't need to be westernized, right?
Yes.
Specifically that. And,
Yes.
and also like other San Pedro, peyote, ibogaine, all of these other ones also that have been formulated and founded by tribal regions, they should stay there, and that's a touchy subject. Psilocybin, although has been used in indigenous cultures all around, that the research is going a little bit more informative inward, so to speak, with that. So what we're doing is we're looking for research that's being done, and it's all up and coming now, being more inclusive, tying into what I was speaking to earlier, like allowing more people to be on more substances or bipolar type 2, being more inclusive and showing the health benefits. A specific example is like alcohol.
Yep.
If you're in active alcoholic addiction, you can't come on retreat.
Yeah.
Can't. Especially with ayahuasca, because ayahuasca has the components called an MAOI inhibitor. Basically what that means is if you have certain chemical compounds from foods, specifically alcohol, in your body, it will make you purge even more and get you very sick, and it's not a good thing, right? So you can't have alcohol in your system at all, as well as many other drugs. Psilocybin has been shown in studies to improve people's relationship with alcohol.
Yeah.
So now what we're doing at HHP is considering, well, as long as they're not in withdrawal, which can be have health adverse complications, as long as they're not in withdrawal, they could have used alcohol 10 days ago. And if we can keep them clean for 10 days, if we send them on a psilocybin retreat, then can their relationship improve? You know what I mean? So now we're having different relationships with chemicals based off of the psychedelic.
I think that part is really fascinating, and so much of like even the fact that they're doing the research to collect data around like what the gut microbiome is doing during an actual while you're under the medicine is fascinating to me, because of just my partnership and relationship to peers who are in the world of functional medicine, there's such a correlation between, you know, hormones and stress response, the nervous system. 100% the research says that it impacts the gut microbiome. So if stress responses are our innate defense system against how we are relating to our life and what is a real threat versus an illusion, to be able to have that understanding is just really, it's fascinating. And I can see why for some people will be one of their anchors into their safety of like you said, for some they don't need to know, they just believe it in and they're willing to try. But for other people, they really appreciate and feel more grounded in that scientific knowing. So that we are sort of collecting it just for those purposes feels really important. And neat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm so grateful for the
cool.
work that you guys are doing, and just for offering, again, opportunities and options and different modalities, as well as resources and like a container for people to feel really held before and after their experience, because I think that is so massive and important, particularly with people that have already experienced it. So maybe their peers that have gone through the retreat with them, and just having that bond, that connection of just like checking in with each other and sharing their own experiences. But before we close it out, is there anything else you want to say? Or I'm
just so delighted to start this conversation with both of you, and to be able to just have open dialogue around something that I feel is really impactful feels really cool.
I did want to spotlight a couple resources. Of course, if you wanted to, if you're a veteran or a veteran spouse and you want to apply to go on retreat or be a part of our program, heroicheartsproject.org, click on veteran, apply now, and we'll get into the system. But the two resources I wanted to spotlight, especially surrounding mental health and psychedelics, the first one is called Fireside Support. It's a free psychedelic hotline to anyone.
Oh, wow.
So whether you're planning to do a psychedelic experience, are in currently a psychedelic experience, having a tough time or a great time, or following a psychedelic experience even years after having one, and you want to know, what does it mean, what should I do, and you're needing some support.
Cool.
Fireside Support, you can call them. There is limited hours, not 24/7. It's a West Coast company, but really amazing, well-trained people that will answer the phone for you. The other one is Stop Soldier Suicide. There's also a subname under their organization called Go Roger. If you're looking for a little bit more of a palatable website to go to, goroger.org. They will connect you to next day therapy, free therapy support in most states, 23 states. If it's not in one of those states, they will connect you to somebody that can help you get connected to therapy support. So if you're having non-emergent thoughts of ending your life or someone else's life, please go to goroger.org. You can also refer somebody on their website for getting quick mental health therapy.
That's invaluable.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I will definitely share these resources and link all of the different handles if they're available, but I appreciate you both being here so much.
Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, and if there are any other questions that come up after you watch the conversation, we're happy to dive in a little bit deeper.
Thanks, everybody.